All right. I believe you can hear me now.
Yes, we can. So thank you.
All right, good. Okay, so back to what we're talking about. So basically, I'm going to show us as an introduction what we're looking at in the coming 3 weeks. We should have been able to do a website, a functional website, eventually, as a basis for the next level if we want to go further in our software engineering journey. Okay. So I will skip all of this. I shared this outline earlier in the group, but I'm just going to go through how we intend to look at them in the course of these 3 weeks. So for week one, which is today, this week, I mean, we're going to be having classes today, every 2 days, on Wednesday and Friday. Though that makes for the three sessions that we'll be having for this week. So introducing the web development, what it is, okay, and some basic things about the web development will be what we'll be looking at today. Then the next sections will be looking at other semantics around HTML and multimedia. Okay, we will then look at the tags and how the tags apply. And the third section we'll be looking at for the week is the styling. CSS means style, cascading style sheet. Okay, so we'll learn the various type of implementation of CSS and as well their properties and other things that you can harness. So that's what we'll be looking at for this week. I will just quickly go straight into the training manual, all right, because of our time. Okay, so if anyone has any question in the course of um, our discussion, our interaction, please just either you raise your hands, you can signify, all right, so that I'm aware and you can ask your questions, we clarify, and we'll move from there. Okay, so the full concept is being a software engineer, all right, because web development is just a subset of being a software engineer. And this is foundational. The beautiful thing about starting your software development journey is starting off as a web developer, you'll be able to implement other forms of development, including mobile app developments and the likes, desktop app development. In the course of my about 20 years as a developer now, I've been able to go through this entire journey using various frameworks, which eventually we'll be looking at after these are basic 3 week course. So anyone that wants to advance to some other programming language, whether PHP, that .NET, C Sharp, whether Python, or the whether Node.js, we could have then specific journey around that. Okay, so software engineering is just simply a systematic application of engineering principles to develop softwares. Okay, just application of these four major principles, which covers designing, developing, testing, and maintaining. So if you hear people say, I'm a software engineer, basically what they do is a full life journey of the design, develop, test, and maintain softwares. Okay, up from the point of designing, end users sometimes don't understand what happens in between while building a software. Okay, but every successful software must go through this full journey. All right, so you as a software developer should always have this at the back of your mind that the four major steps has to be complete before you can call yourself a software developer. So there must be design part of it. I'll show us a little bit of what it looks like. Um, there must be development, which is your coding. All right. So there is the testing bit of it. So now you have coded the test. If it's working as expected, then there's a maintenance. Okay. The code has to be maintained over time. Right. So those are the four major principles of being a software engineer. So if you're asked any day or you want to think, oh, who a software engineer is, just know that somebody that applies these four principles in building is software. There are lots of cut and nail software developers currently in Nigeria. I can tell you that, I've been able to work for a number of organizations, and one of the major complaints is people not following the principles of development. I can tell you for free a lot of the softwares, and that's why you see that a lot of softwares developed in Nigeria don't last probably 2, 3 years, whether a mobile app in the Play stores or even a website, okay, because some of these principles are not followed to the letter. All right, so we're looking at building a software engineering team that can represent Africa in the globe. Like when we write our codes, it can meet international best practices. Okay, so that's basically for software engineering. Now, software engineering is broken into, there are three major stack, okay, three major classifications of people when they say, oh, I'm a software engineer. All right, there's a front end, there is a back end, and there is full stack. All right, a front end, a back end, and a full stack. For the front end guys, they are the guys that do what you see. They develop the UI and UX. We call it UI UX. The UI just means the user interface, then the UX means the user experience. All right, so they are the ones responsible for what you interact with as a website, what you click on. So what you'll be learning in the course of these 3 weeks is actually a UI, being a UI engineer as per HTML, okay, as regards HTML. So those are the front end guys. There are the back end guys as well. The back end guys are the guys that are responsible for the functionalities, the back end, the server side logic of things. Okay, they handle calculations that happen behind the scene for every software, the database interactions. Okay, they call it IO, so input and output, all the logic, the APIs that interact with the database to return information to the front end. Those are handled by backend engineers. All right, so they are engineers that all they do is just focusing on developing those backend things, APIs and other programming languages to fetch information from the server. All right. While the front end are doing things that users see. So for simply put, is front end engineers are the guys that develop the one that you as a user use your browser to access. All right. That's in a layman term. While the back end engineers are the ones that now do the logic of fetching information from the server to return it to the front end. Right. So those are the two major. Then the third one is the full stack. Being a full stack developer means you know both the front end and the back end. Eventually, I'm looking forward to building full stack developers in the course of our entire journey as software development engineers. So I believe that we have been able to grasp what these three classes of engineers are as software developers. Now, having known this general knowledge, we'll come now to the specifics. Like I said, the foundation for software engineers would be the web, all right, because you get to understand some logics on how the internet interacts with your code base, all right. It gives you a foundation before you grow into other forms of development. All right, so web development and the material here just states it refers to creating websites or web applications that run on the internet. I will explain this further as, like I said, everything is going to be explained in the lowest layman language that we can understand. Okay, so a website is actually just a folder or group of folders, all right, that is hosted or kept on a server. Okay, so imagine a website as currently on your phone you have maybe a folder that you have pictures inside, all right, photos folder, for example. All right. Now, because it's sitting on your phone, you're the only one that can access it. If a second person wants to access it, you need to show the person your phone. All right. So the concept of website, what brought about the concept of website is when it became a critical issue to share information across boundaries. All right. So I have that picture currently on my phone. But my brother is somewhere in Kaduna. How do I show him this information without having to travel, without having to post it? Okay. So the internet was given birth to. Immediately the internet was given birth to, then website, the whole idea of website came on board. That's why you see the HTTP hypertext transport protocol, transfer protocol. All right, so that's a way of now transferring this information between where I am to Kaduna. So what it now has helped us do is that photo that I have on my local phone, I can just copy it to a server somewhere. A server is also a computer. It's just a high specification computer. I can now copy this photo to that high specification computer, wherever it is, and over the internet, somebody in Kaduna can access it. So that's entirely what a website is. It's not something very complicated with the basic understanding that a website is just a folder or a number of folders, okay, hosted on a physical server. It could be a physical or cloud, all right, servers. Now, let me also explain. I'll explain further what I wanted to just say now when I get to the client server model and relationships. I hope we grab the logic that I'm trying to explain now about what a website is before I move on to then. And I've mentioned already what the front end is, what the back end is, and also the full stack. The same way we have it on the engineering side, we also have it on the website. Okay, so on the website, there are people that do the web interface, all right, and all the things that happen on the front end of things, which is it interacts with the user's browser. Then the back end side, the one that interacts with the server. Remember, I mentioned that your image being copied to a server so that someone else not in your location can access it. That's what the website is. So now, since it's copied to a server, there has to be something that's speaking within the browser and the server. So the backend guys are the guys that do that thing that communicates between the server now and the user's browser. All right. Then the full stack development, knowing both the front end and the back end. Okay, so is this concept clear before we move on to how the web really works? Okay, the concept of what a website is, and so far we're good, yeah?
We're good, sir. We're good.
Yes, sir.
All right, perfect. Okay, so like I said, we'll be doing a lot of these background links for those first classes. We'll get to the point where we'll start writing codes, all right? Because the whole idea is it's to making it as practical as possible so that the somebody that's a total novice as regards technology can pick up from zero to eventually 100% as a developer. All right, now how does websites work? How does the web work? Remember, I said it has to be information shared within a server and someone somewhere else. Okay, so there are four major components of how it works. There's the client, all right, which can be your phone, it can be your laptop, it can be your workstation, that's your desktop computer that you are using to access the internet. And of course, it communicates with a browser. All right, so you get on your computer and you open up a browser. At that point, your computer is a client. All right, the client makes the request. All right, so it's a client. Now, the second component is the server. The server is where I have stored those folders. Remember the example I gave of your photos and you keeping it on a server. All right. So the server is just a high skilled computer where you have copied that folder to. All right. So eventually, even when you do web hosting and all of that, there is nothing different as web hosting, simply you just copying your folder to a particular server, right? A lot of things happen under the scene, but primarily what happens is your folder is copied from your local system up to the server where you are hosting, all right, the different providers. Now, HTTP, I made reference to this while I was explaining the means of communication. All right, there has to be internet, and then even if there is internet, the technology came up of how this information can be transferred. All right, that's how HTTP came up. It's hypertext transfer protocol. So browsers use that to communicate with the server, and eventually the DNS. You know, DNS is more like a dynamic name server. Is more like the identity of your website on the internet. Okay, so whatever your website name is, for example, you can have www.caleb.com. All right. When you punch that on your browser, it goes to the server, okay, that has an IP address linked to that name. All right. So that particular server, there are different ways of hosting a website. I'm sure some of us that are already into tech will understand that there is a shared hosting. All right. So there's a server, like I explained, that different people can host their websites on it on that single server. All right, so that is shared hosting. There are a lot of providers that do shared hosting, Namecheap, GoDaddy, even in Nigeria, who Go host, I think they are Go 54 now. Okay, so what's simply happening is they have a physical server, large scale server that you can copy your file to. Uh, um, Person B can copy your file to, person C can copy the file to the same server. All right, but then when we are trying to host our different websites. Mine, caleb.com, is communicating with an external IP address. All right. Every server has multiple external IP. So that can be configured. If you do a little bit of hardware, I think I have a little bit of foundation on the hardware side. Either them using their router. Okay, so you can configure a number of public IPs on a specific server. All right. So caleb.com is configured to a specific IP. The other person's website is configured to a specific public IP, even if it's on the same server. So that's what DNS role in all of this. You punch the website name, all right? It pushes it to the IP address of that physical server. The IP is the identification of every system, every computer. All right. It's the internet protocol. So that's how it identifies every server. So in a nutshell, this diagram describes what the client server model is. A laptop or a phone or workstation, it uses the internet and then accesses information on the server. And we bring back the information to the browsers on these systems. Okay, so one important thing I wanted to point is the introduction of CDN in modern days. All right, content discovery network. That's CDN. All right. What CDN does is there are giant companies, there are big companies that you have the Amazons, you have the Googles, all right. You have even Facebook and the likes, all right. They have servers situated in different continents. Okay. Remember, we said a website is hosted on a physical server, so it's on one computer. Now, somebody in the US that wants to access a website that is hosted here in Nigeria. Maybe the server is somewhere in one data center in my house in Nigeria here. Okay. What happens is the network travels. Okay. It's not automatic. They don't hit server once. It goes from one point to another, to another, to another, just the same way information is transferred. All right. Till it gets to the server. Then the information is transferred back to the person's browser right there in the US. So it goes through different routers before it gets to the final destination. Okay, so what CDN has been able to do is build a network of servers. Okay, so you host your website on one here in Nigeria. It replicates that single website across the other one. So if I have one in the US, I have one in Nigeria, I have one in South Africa. If I have a CDN network like these giant companies, like I mentioned, if I host here in Nigeria, it replicates across those ones. So somebody in the US that wants to open my website, it doesn't journey down to Nigeria because it has a replicated version in the US. It just hits the US server and returns. That's why you see that CDN, any website hosted on a CDN network or any provider of web hosting that has CDN is very fast when it wants to return. Example is no matter how heavy YouTube is, YouTube video would load faster than one video that someone uploads on their website. Okay, so that's the concept of what is happening. All right. So in the client server relationship, again, sorry, is anyone asking? Hello. Okay. All right. Sorry. I think someone joined. But can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Great. Great. All right. So that's the concept of the client server model relationship. That's everything on how websites interact. Okay. So when building a website, remember we mentioned that there are four major principles of you being a proper software engineer: design, development, testing, maintenance. Okay. So when we talk about design, there are certain tools that are used for design. The good thing about software development is different people specialize in different things. Okay, you might not need to know about the design, all right, whether you how to use Figma. There are two major, the front line design softwares, all right, for designing whether web or mobile apps is Figma and Adobe XD. Adobe XD currently, I think they have shut down or something, but Figma and Adobe XD are the major guys for design. I will show us something on one of the solutions that we built on what design is like. Uh, okay, what a Figma design can look like. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes, we can see.
All right, so Figma design is like this. You design, though you learn it. Okay, there are some drag and drop components. There are some other things that you do to design the website. If you look at it, it will seem like, oh, maybe it's the same design of flyers, but it's kind of different because this gives a better user experience in the sense that it's operational like a website. Okay, if I run this design, because you have to create, working with Figma, you have to create the different, we call it states. Okay, state is if the button is clicked, how should it respond? Okay, if I swipe, what should happen? All of those Figma and Adobe allows designers carry them out. All right, the output of what you have under design right now is this. BuyToken is one of our apps out there currently. I will show you now what was developed. Okay, though I think one or two images was changed. www.buytoken.com. So as a developer, the first step for you should be the design. The concept has to be designed. All right. Designed and approved. Okay, this is the website itself. All right. So if I scroll, you'll see that it has to be in alignment with the design. So whatever was designed, it already has given the developer the thought process of what they want done. Early days when we started development, sometime 2004, when I started as a developer, there wasn't this concept of, especially in Nigeria, it might be existing, might have been existing abroad, but in this side of the world, there was nothing like this UI UX popular. It wasn't popular then. So you as a developer have to think of the placement of different objects. Okay, what here this has to be, where this has to be, and the output eventually was a very rigid type of looking softwares. They are not really very user friendly. Okay, but eventually when the knowledge kept expanding in Africa and in Nigeria specifically, this has given us better user experience when it comes to app or websites. So our first step is having a design like this before we then get to the development. Let me go back to our document. So when we have designed with a Figma or Adobe XD, remember I mentioned it might not be you doing the design, there are professionals that can do that. But if you also want to grab the knowledge of how to use Figma and all that, that's great. I also use Figma. I use Adobe XD and Figma as well. That's another class for another purpose entirely. But for this, we are focused on development software. All right. So the next step is we have the design, we need to write a code. Okay, for each of those designs, there's a code that should replicate exactly what it is. Right? And earlier we have pointed that there's front end and there's back end. Okay. In the course of our lessons, we'll be taking that of front end. HTML. HTML is hypertext markup language. That's the language that the browser understands. Okay, whenever it needs to fetch information or return information. Okay. Then the CSS is the styling. Okay. Anything you write on the browser does not understand it. Even if you type space bars, okay, the browser does not know what space bar is. So there is an HTML syntax to tell the browser that this is a space bar. There's this CSS, this cascading style sheet that also tells the browser will display it in this way. Okay, is a way of giving beauty to the website. Then JavaScript. Okay, just like the name, JavaScript is more of a client and that's a browser end functionality. You can do things like a calculator that doesn't need to go to the server and return any information. Okay, it can just calculate based on information entered by the user right there on the browser. So that's where you get the JavaScripts. Then the back end is where we have the Node.js and the likes. This for now is not part of what we'll be doing, but at the end of our 3 weeks, we can make the decision if we want to continue to learn the back end and become specialized in specifics. All right. Testing the apps is now where we check for bugs and fixing whatever needs to be fixed. Then we deploy the website for public access. That's number 4. Like I've already explained how deployment works. It's just a folder. Website is a folder that you're copying to the server. So no matter which method you use for deployment, whether you're copying it physically to the server, if you're hosting a physical server, or you upload the shared hosts, the ones that are popular, they say upload. But what happens is files are just being copied from your local computer to a server that is hosted somewhere. So, in a nutshell, quickly to wrap up for this very lesson, the things that you will need in a course for these are 3 weeks. You can either note them down or you download them instantly. I believe you have the Google Chrome or Firefox as a browser on your system. Then you need an environment that you need to write code on. Okay. The best that we recommend for starting up is the Visual Studio Code. All right. So if you don't have Visual Studio Code, you can do well to just visit the browser and type VS Code. Let me show you. If I go ahead and type VS Code download, okay, VS Code is by Microsoft. Okay, so you can download it on your system and install. Okay, depending on which one you use. If you're using a Mac, you can run this. If you're using a Windows, you can run whichever one is compatible with your system. Uh, so yeah, I mentioned the browser, Google Chrome or Firefox, VS Code. The command line interface is already on your system. Every laptop has it, so you don't need to install that. From time to time, we'll look at how we run commands there. Then version control, GitHub is our preferred. There are other softwares that you can use for version control, but GitHub is our preferred candidate in this our lesson. Okay, again, I'll open up what GitHub is like. Just you can visit github.com. All right, if you go there now and open github.com and just sign up, it's an online. I'm currently signed. I already have an account with them, so for me, I'll just do is sign in. All right. So the only task that you have to do today is to download this VS Code on your system and also sign up to GitHub. Okay. That's the foundation of what we'll need to do. Okay. If you have done that, I will send us this, what we'll need to do as a task for today. Okay. Creating a file on VS Code and all of that. Let me just show you an example as we are here. Okay. This is my own VS Code. Okay, can you see my VS Code open?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so let me click on create new file. I give it a name. Let me say on our instruction manual here, it says I should create index.html. All right, so a new file, index.html. All right, so I'll create that. And okay, I'll save it as index.html. .html. So it's going to create the file now. All right. So it created a blank file for me, which is what it's supposed to do. So now what you would do as a task is you create that file as I've created and copy this code that I have here. I will paste it in the group. All right. So no problems. I'll paste it in the group. I'll come here and paste the code. Let me save this and see. That's all you need to do for today. So just open a file, name it index.html, paste the code that I'm going to drop on the group. Now I'll open it up on the browser so that you see what it is. The file is on my desktop currently. I'll open it on the browser so you see what the website looks like. Um, yeah, Chrome. Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yes, can
All
see it.
right. So for every one of us taking this basic one, this is the result that I'm expecting to see if you eventually create yours. All right. So when you eventually create yours, this is the result I'm going to see. Hopefully today I'll be expecting this file or a screenshot of it on the WhatsApp group, or yeah, I think a screenshot of it on WhatsApp group is good enough for me once you have run it on your own end. For some of us that have already gone through some of these classes before now, you might not need to do this, but if you feel you want to, it's also fine. It's also fine. So those are the basics and foundation of the things that we need to know, okay, being a website developer. So far, we just have about 3 minutes or so before Zoom kicks us off. Is there any question or any other thing that you need to know as a foundation on whatever we have discussed today? Here you need clarity, you can ask the questions. That's the whole idea of me being having a live class rather than a recorded video. All right. So you can ask your questions, I'll respond to them. But if everything is clear, we are perfect. I'll just paste these practical tasks that we need to do and then the self-assessment questions on the group. So we'll respond to them. Is that fine?
Sorry, I was going to ask on the VS Code. Is there a place we were supposed to press go live after pasting the code that you sent to the group?
Okay, so on your VS Code, once you download it, uh, either you can go on File. If you go File, you'll see New File as a menu. Okay, can you still see my screen?
Yes, yes.
All right, so once I click on a new file, I give the file a name. Let me call this index2.html. Right, it's going to open a blank file for me. Let me save it on the desktop still. So you just copy the code. Once you copy the code and save, that's all. If you go to wherever you saved it, in this case, I saved it on my desktop. If you save any file as .html, it will show as a website. If it's Chrome that is on your laptop, it will show you as a Chrome file. So once you double click it, you open on your browser.
Okay.
Yeah. So once you have done it on your local, just double click it. It will show on your browser. Great. All right, people. I think our timing is 40 minutes instead of an hour, maybe because I joined before time. So but if there are questions on what you need to know, you can also still drop on the group. I would respond accordingly. Then from our next classes, I think we'll be writing a lot more code. It's going to be now code based. All right, both HTML code for foundation, and maybe next class we'll then deal with CSS, the different types of CSS and all that. Okay. So thank you for joining. I hope the rest of the guys will be able to join the next class. Some of them reached out to say what the challenges were. Okay, so yeah, thanks for joining. I'll paste the needful on the group, both the practical and then the assessments. All right. Thanks so much. Have a beautiful day ahead.